very elusive creature. Sometimes we call him Johann, sometimes Yuki, sometimes Julio, and sometimes it's Johas, which I think it's actually Jonas. That's it. We may find this elusive creature working in the garden like this, pulling and being very efficient at what he does. So come, follow me into the wild, wild urban jungle here. Perhaps we'll run into a crocodile. Perhaps we'll run into a Nile monitor or something of such sort. Hi. As we go bounting through the fields of clover. Hey, clover's looking kind of wilted right there.
Just saying.
I'm just saying.
Handful of clover when I started.
That's right.
You keep saying you're gonna mulch.
It's very clovery. And you kept saying you're gonna water it every day. Watch out, this is everything I'm saying to you is recorded right now. See, oh my God, doesn't this look so much better? Great job, Celeste. Yes. And so look, you guys, how long since we planted these bananas? 5 months. Almost exactly 5 months since this clump was planted to the date. I was looking at my record. So 5 months later, this banana has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 keiki off one tiny keiki. Not a drop of fertilizer in it. Look at this hua right here. This is gonna be upward of probably 60, 70 pound hua when it gets ripe. So I think this is, how did this happen? This happened to our mound. And what I'm gonna show you back there is these same mounds. And they're taller right now. But guess what? These mounds were that tall in the beginning as well. And through letting them dry cure, and then also adding all the mycelium and throwing a little bit of seed here, a little bit of seed here, a little bit of seed here, I might throw 100 seeds and only expect 5 plants out of it. So it's allowing things to volunteer where they do best in the scenario and multi-layering it again and again. If we look behind me right here, we see cilantro, we see pinto beans, we see Russian red kale, we see 5 different types of carrots, 3 different types of chili peppers, taro. And by the way, this one right here is, you can see the pico one where it comes all the way down to the center. We have these bananas, we have papaya trees. And so without having to add any fertilizer at all, by simply taking the silt that's washing out of the mountains, adding some earthworms and some mycelium in here. Look at the baby earthworms that are here right now. Those are called Amnithis gracilis. And these worms right here will be quite like large. You see them right there?
Yeah.
And so these are the very first stages, 5 months out through the winter period. They've been breaking these wood chips down and a lot of the organic material. And in another 3 months, these worms will be this big. And these worms will go down as far as 18 feet deep. And they'll make these permanent tunnels. And then some of the other worms we have in here, which I'll show you, are considered the red worm or the leaf litter worm and the manure worms. They're on the top breaking stuff down. Now these guys grab it and they bring it deep down into the subsoil. When they're down there, they also eat rock. They ingest rock with fungal material in it. And they poop out the same stuff they ate here, humic acid. So that humic acid starts to break down the rock in these deep levels and this sub-level down here. And then the worms bring it back up to the top. And if you've ever seen a rainy day, you see all these little piles of stuff everywhere. That's from the deep dweller worms. And now the leaf litter worms and the manure worms, they also eat that and they spread it out. And then that whole thing works into this web that's underneath. And that's basically what we're doing. We're taking the silt, we're taking the mulch from the invasive trees, chop them down, turn them into wood chips, pile it together. We're adding the mycelium, which I talk about a lot, which is basically mushrooms. But when we talk about mycelium, we talk about the network that's under the ground, the web, that a tree in the shade can get photosynthesis from a tree in the sun. That a plant out here can grab nutrients from this pile and cycle it through this network. So like this giant sponge, like the aspens are considered one of the largest living organisms on the planet because they're connected by this colony of mycorrhizal fungi. And when we talk about mycelium, we're talking about fungus. And the mushrooms we see are no more than the fruit. A lot of citrus trees look the same, the fruits look different, mushrooms no different. The mushroom, the mycelium, is like the base, the type of mycelium is, it's this network. And so a lot, we hear about mycorrhizal fungi and the relationship that plants have with them. They can ask for food, they can receive photosynthesis. We don't know a whole lot about these things, and what we're understanding now is that it's not just the mycorrhizal, it's all of the mycelium. Like every time I pick up a log and I show you and it's coated white, it's the polyspores, it's all the different things working together that create this network where everything can now feed off of this pile. So rather than me having to move compost to it or me having to take a fertilizer and put it into it, everything is eating the wood chips and it's getting spoon fed to them. It's also holding the moisture in the hole because it's kind of like a sponge and it has the ability to sort of a capillary system where it can move things around within it. And in there, what else did we see in there? We saw earthworms, we saw copepods, which are roly-polies. We'll see beetle larvae, the same ones that are eating our taro, the Japanese beetle. But what are they all doing and they have in common is they're eating wood chips. They're eating the things that we grow that we put back in the ground, and they're turning it into humic acid in a sense. They're turning it into a complete bonded fertilizer that's gonna be there and that can be microly spoon fed out, like in microdoses, to all of the plants around it. And now that this plant that we thought we needed 16, apparently in the banana industry, this thing would receive 30 pounds of ammonium nitrate in a year to get a hua like this off of it. Who would have thought? We could just pile up wood chips, put some earthworms, copy what a forest does, and we'll have 80, 100-pound huas one after the other. And this is 5 months from planting, and the amount of bananas we'll do off this one mound here is pretty astronomical. Tens of thousands of pounds in 18 months or so, what's gonna come out of here. So that should show pretty clearly, why do we need these chemical fertilizers? Why are we thinking that way? Why aren't we thinking build the land, build the soil? That's what regenerative agriculture is about. That's what you guys are all a part of. And it's not like your standard thing. Some of you guys know a little bit of gardening, got it under your belt, and you're like, wow, Eddie does that a little different over here. Because I'm basically trying to copy what a forest does. A forest doesn't need to be fertilized. If you leave it, you can come back months later, years later, it's there. It takes care of itself. And the little things we take for granted. If a bird starts perching right here, and it starts dropping its poop right here, who do you think is going to prosper from it? This ginger that's right underneath it. This same banana tree that's making the bananas that the birds are eating are gonna prosper from those birds eating those bananas and pooping underneath it. That's what nature is set up for. We look at it in a way and we think, oh, it's just for us there. So we don't really have that same concept with it. But for me, I'm looking at the much bigger picture with it. So all of this working together is what's creating our fertility. And it's not a forest yet, but now there'll be ulu trees. So I think there's 13 ulu trees that go in this. There's another 14 or 15 soursop. There's about 100 papaya trees that still go in here. There's several hundred, if not 1,000, Pua olena sites, which is our native turmeric, and so on and so on. Our taro, if you guys looked at it before, just gonna point it out to you guys, you see how it's all small now? But some of you guys came here when it was this tall and it was just growing. It was using all of its nitrogen cycle. As it grows through that cycle and it drops back down, it's not using the nitrogen, it's putting all the energy into the root. That's also how you know when it's ready. And this was all taro that was planted during makahiki, which isn't really what you do. No one planted during makahiki. So they're all small corms, but they're super nutritious. And they're also, what we're growing it for is huli. Huli is to turn it over. So we have a start. So out of each one huli we planted, we'll get 10 or 20 oha, or the babies from it. And then we'll be able to replant all of those. So that was our strategy. We came in within a disaster. We set up this place while we're giving our houses away, we're growing food, but we're also expanding, and a lot of what we set just in this mound will be enough to seed the entire 17 acres out of what we have here. So we're growing food, we're giving food away, it's all working its way through it, and now we're gonna walk to the hot jungle back over here. So the reason I'm pointing this out to everyone is we're gonna go look at the mounds back there. And I've been showing you guys, look, we don't plant in wood chips, we plant where there's dirt, wherever that is. And that can get confusing. Sometimes you can think, oh, okay, I want to plant here, but there's no dirt here. There's just wood chips. But you'll get to a place where you'll find there is dirt and not wood chips. It all depends how the mound sits. So with this out here, by the time we're planting papaya trees, we know there's dirt right here because there's gravel right underneath it. So we're hitting the dirt right here with the gravel. And you look at that, and that might look intimidating right there, but look at the earthworms coming out of it. If you look in here, you'll see earthworms popping right out of the hard pan. See right there on the bottom, little baby ones. So what's happening is the mycelium is penetrating this right here. And when we set this up for a base yard, we didn't scrape this. We didn't scrape all the roots out. We just took the silt that had deposited here and the green growth of the grass. So we didn't compromise this. So we have most of our soil level layers intact. So now, as the fertility gets into it, papayas, even in this area here, will look like those bananas there. And it's not because they're planted in the mound, it's because they're feeding off of the mound. So now the web that comes out of the mound will feed these papaya trees. They'll be in full sunlight. They won't be in competition with the bananas. The bananas will super clump for their areas. And then in the shade of it, there's ginger and turmeric. And you see all this stuff here, we're getting into summer. So this was stuff that we grow to feed the ground with. We're literally growing this, and in the winter, we have a lot of food we can give away with it. But as summer comes on, we let the cabbage moth eat it into fertilizer. And then planted under it already was what? Ginger. So all the ginger was pre-thought out. We were able to grow all this kale, feed a bunch of people, and now we have this crazy nutritious fertilizer that the cabbage moth is dropping in a pelletized form, pure nitrogen. And now what's left of it, we simply take it and bury it and feed it to the worms. Now the worms turn it into that same stuff I showed you back there, super nutritious soil. So we're really not having to compromise anything, it's just we're constantly building this strategy. So these will phase out, ginger will take its place. You guys will come through and start plugging peanuts in here. Peanuts will take the place of the taro on the top. The peanut is a nitrogen fixer, and then again, we'll harvest some of those peanuts, but some of those peanuts are just to feed the ground with. What was our slogan?
Something ground, growing the ground.
Grow the ground. Oh, well, we grow it for the ground. We're thinking that's another good slogan for a t-shirt. So a lot of the crops that I grow for the ground. And that concept is, if I grow carrots or I grow beets, I can harvest what I need, but if I don't need it, there's no waste. I cycle it right back in the ground, let the earthworms eat it. In fact, areas that I do carrots in and leave the carrots in, I then grow turmeric and my yields are twice as big and way more vibrant in color, way more beta carotene in them. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Can we grow sunblock?
So the best sunblock that I know that's been used everywhere for years and years and years is coconut oil. Coconut oil in its natural form has a SPF to it. I don't know of too many other things that have it that grow. There are a few plants in there, but not anything that comes right to my mind right off the bat, other than in the South Pacific, coconut oil being what you really want to cover yourself with, but not the stuff in a bottle that's all refined, that actually has the glycerin and whatnot into it as well. So, right here, we got some Ilima right here. You guys know that, a native plant. You can see that our kale is all cycling out. We'll cycle through the taro. We'll plant all the huli and some of the mounds in the back that are coming. And then every one of those taro plants will feed a family for a week. And that'll be along with the other vegetables and stuff we give them that we're transitioning into. So I just want to give that. So also I want to take into account that every one of these bananas you see right here, this is what they looked like 5 months ago, right here. No more than that. So in 5 months, to have 10 babies around it and 80-pound hulas that are already coming, it's unheard of. So again, why do we have to rip the ground up? Why do we have to use ammonium nitrate fertilizer? Why do we have to deal with that? It seems ridiculous to me. All we really have to do is listen to what the ground is telling us. And a lot, I say, is observation. And we're going through that as a group, right? Like the papaya seeds. I'm like, oh, mix this 40-60. But I didn't mention that, hey, you need to look at that by the weight, not the volume. So our soil mixer came out a little too dense. And then our papayas will have a harder time sprouting out of them. And they'll get waterlogged too easy. So everybody needs to be on the same page that we can't water all those papayas all the time. So it's a learning thing for all of us, including me, to share the knowledge with you guys that way. Another observation, all the papayas that were planted out of the fresh papayas that are my strains, almost 80–90% germination. The stuff that was planted out of dry papaya seeds, which is everyone's telling them to do, and that they think is standard protocol, maybe 10% germination. So just little things we want to keep in mind. A lot of things are meant to be planted fresh like that. But I think the growth patterns of being able to go from this to a fully producing 10 trees in a bunch, and 5 months speaks really loudly to what we are doing right here. So we're gonna keep moving, keep walking this way.
I asked him the exact same question every time I saw it.
If everybody's here, these bananas are planted too close together. That one stays, these two go. There's a tapioca that's on top there. That's, is that where we decided? I thought we put it on the end. Oh yeah, that's not supposed to be there. No tapioca in the center. You can see this is a mound that's been sitting here, and I want to point out this is very different than what we're doing in the mound in the back. This one, because of the windbreak and because of several different factors and what we started out here with already, we're doing the kalo on the top of these mounds. The other mounds have a lot more log material in them and a lot more bigger material in it, so it's a different strategy. What will happen with those is squash will grow all over the tops of them and blanket all of that out. And I'm gonna go and show you guys a bunch of different phases in that and what that looks like. Bananas will only be every 20, 30 feet apart because they get such big clumps. You can see what they'll do. So we want to set up a landscape of islands that there still can be an ulu tree right there, a breadfruit tree, and a soursop tree over there, and 15 papayas right here, and 30 pua olena sites. So it's a little different here than we're going to do in the back, and I think that's why people have been like, oh, I want to plant in soil. Let me look and see what's going on here. So that's where we're going right now. Okay, so the other thing that I want to point out to you guys is we flood down here. You can see right here where silt's been coming down out of the mountain, and this is what it looks like, and this is what we're building our soil with. And this is, well, this is a rock actually, but right next to it is. You can usually get it out in pretty good flakes. We'll show you that somewhere else. But all of this sediment that's on top here, it's flowing in and flooding this field. But the way it's designed is you see this little berm that I have right here, it's designed to come in and get caught, and all of that sediment floods into the field. So instead of all that dirty water going out and smothering the reef and all that material running off the mountain into the ocean, that's what we're growing food with. We're literally picking up that silt right here and we're piling it with the wood chips. We're being creative. We're grabbing logs that have mushrooms growing in them for the mycelium. We're throwing handfuls of earthworms, copepods. We're taking healthy piles, taking wheelbarrows of that and dumping it into this pile. Things I did early in the game. But basically now this, which was a problem, we're growing food with. And we're creating forests that will last for generations, actually, and grow food and leave healthy soil behind. So instead of these guys saying, oh, that's all going out there. Oh, it used to come into a wetland, but that doesn't serve us. We want to put houses there or whatever. Let's just let it go in the ocean. No, instead of that, let's like pay attention to where it's coming. So those coconuts back there, for instance, I don't water them. I depend on the few rains a year and flooding all of that water into that field, and then it feeds the water table. And I think I'm the only guy growing like this way without irrigation. And so what a huge part of that is managing the water that comes down around us and letting it go to the places it's supposed to instead of pass it by and just stay dry. Water harvesting should be a huge part of our mentality, and especially if we have terrible deforestation like you see behind us right here. This used to be sandalwood trees and tons of different natives up here, and this was a wet area more so than it is now. Just the transpiration of the trees and the shaded out hill stopped the convection from going the way it does, which creates a convection current from heat. When it was cool, it would create a down convection current on it instead. And the moisture in this area is why these streams were running, and why they're not running now is what a bad legacy of just terrible agriculture before us has done. And that's going to be the cane companies, the pineapple companies, but we say enough already. You know what I mean? So let's grow food. Let's look at the topography of the land as stewards to it and say, how can I help it? Oh man, my dog has fleas. Oh man, I can pick fleas and rub soap, whatever. You know, it's the same thing. We want to take care of this. So now we have this mound. We're putting all the water from the rain right into this mound here. I did this months and months ago in the very beginning and before this project started. And now, just recently, we're about ready to get a rain. So we're gonna pay attention to this all together. If it rains on Thursday, we're gonna see what happens here now and how much of that rain, instead of putting the sediment there, puts it right into our area that we're working on. You guys were also asking me how I was gonna flatten out some of the areas in here to be able to mow it. You ever see when they set tile and they pour it into a room, it's called a thin set? You just pour it down, it levels everything out. Let's let the sediment do that for us and then be able to plant in that. So I just wanted to point out these swales, and then we're just gonna keep walking up there. So as simple as just not letting it run down the road that's running straight up and down, letting it stop and divert into the areas that we want it. Then you could just pick the dog shit up in a paper bag, put it in the worm bin, done. The worms will eat it perfectly, and then you could compost trees in the area with it or whatever. Instead of putting tonnage into dumps in these plastic bags. This ditch right here was dug straight through to here. And there's a ditch into the mountain, and all the rain comes out of this ditch right here and goes straight into the ocean. So we said, we're not gonna let that happen. It was doing the same thing on the other side here. So we made keyholes and we diverted it. And then that way, all of that mud that was going into the ocean just fills that wetland there, which is where we're growing food at. So it's like just common sense things. Why are we letting it divert in places when it shouldn't be running off the mountain into the ocean? You know, there's a stream right there. If things were set up the way they were supposed to be, things would run into the stream the right way. So here, we're gonna walk back here into the compost area. So when I started this field here, there were just, like, see, there's still some trash. I haven't got to the end of it yet. Taking cars out of the ground, taking so much trash out of here, and then taking all the invasive trees and turning them into wood chips and turning them into piles and letting them dry cure, letting grass grow over a bunch of those. They're just sitting dormant waiting for me. And then come into all the areas I have that. This is green waste from different areas and areas on the land where we've piled it all up together. It's in a dry form right now, meaning it doesn't get any water on it. I like to go like 6 months, and then it doesn't get hot like thermophilic composting either. What's going on is termites, boar beetles, cockroaches, all things that love dry stuff are eating it, but they're filling it with micro holes everywhere. And so now, at the same time, I've also thrown logs that have mushrooms in there, and all of that's going, and it's got very minimal water, enough to spread a little of the mycelium, hold it on the bottom in the cool spots, and now all it needs on it is wood chips and water. And as soon as that happens, it will start to take on a whole different form like what you see around you on the edges everywhere. So the areas we're gonna look at that we're gonna be planting stuff on that I talked about earlier are these berms up here in front of me. These berms aren't ready to do anything with yet, but what will happen here on this area right here, I will manage this out and I'll put rows in between it, and then we will plant this out with squash this summer. We'll probably do 50,000 pounds of squash right here in this tiny corner on top of this. That'll coincide with changing the mechanics of this pile so that it has moisture in it. The earthworms will start to thrive. The mycelium will spread out underneath it, right? So that, and then after we've grown all those squash, this stuff's permanent place. Now we'll grab this stuff with my machines and we'll layer it in the berms as well in different spots, and we'll create new berms with it, just like we did all of these berms that you see. So these berms are material and not fully composted material. Inside some of these berms are logs this big. And it's, wow, that's not gonna break down, is it? Well, this will take years, maybe even tens of years to break down. But where did this come from? It came from the ground. It came from the sky, sequestered carbon. We're just basically putting it back in. So now, if instead of having to grind this up and feed a little bit of it to each plant, we have like an avatar, this web that's grabbed it, and now it micropartically feeds it out to plants. And you don't notice it, but you come back 10 years later, it looks the same. You touch it, it just disintegrates because it has fed it in these microparticles to everything around it. And even out here where there's not much going on, let's see what happens when we just lift a log that's been on the ground where it's not even wet. You can see action. Here's our mycelium, look at this. See our mycelium spreading out on the bottom like a web, right where it's touching the ground? So this log is already being digested by this Ina. And if we look under it here more, what's happening? If we look good at it, we're gonna see there's, even with no water, it's already starting to break things down. So now when the next stage comes and there's water on this, I've just given an example. Now imagine this looking like this. So let's move over this way and walk down our piles. This whole field you see, this angle you see, this is all silt that I collected. Because they have an asphalt road here and they have bad management, it was all just going into the ocean. So I cut keyholes in the back here, I'll show you. And all the silt flooded this field. And as the silt flooded this field, we were able to use it and then taking stuff like that and chipping it in wood chips to create the piles. And in some areas, there's big logs and stuff in here. But what'll happen here is a squash will be planted there, a squash will be planted there. Let's see where things are getting, this hasn't really had any water on it yet, but look at this, guys, check this out. So that mycelium, just from this log being here and not even having much for water on anything, you can see what's going on with that. You can see the little webs spreading out and doing what it's gonna do. So that, having that organic material in the ground, this is a stage and all of this will still just get squash on it. But let's step over to this pile here now. So if you guys look at this pile here, and you wonder where you're gonna plant that on it. In this pile in particular, you'll see that there's dirt up in some of the areas with the wood chips. And I've scraped a little bit of the silt and I put it up with the pile. That's because this mound will be planted. It'll get Pua olena. It'll get a papaya tree right there. It'll get a pineapple tree right there. And then in the dip right here, it'll get a papaya tree. But guess what? In the next 3 months, a papaya tree will be as big as I am. And it'll change the dynamics of the pile. It will shade it. Now we're watering these plants. Now instead of the pile looking like that little tiny thing you see with no water is gonna go just explode. And that's what's happening with these piles right now. So I haven't started hitting this one with the sprinkler yet. And if you look at it, the guys are still dropping wood chips. And the wood chips in this pile, if you guys look closely, they come all the way to here. So I'll move all of that. And you can't really tell. I got some machine work to do before you guys can plant this mound. But when we go to the other mounds here, I'm gonna show you what's happening here. But now here, pineapple, pineapple, Pua olena, papaya, papaya. You guys starting to get the drift of what that kind of looks like? Taro. And now if you look here, there is dirt. And then you might come to here and you might go, oh, there's a little bit of a pile here. Yeah, there's a bit strong mulch here, right? So come right down here, look, dirt. And don't be afraid for us to put the sprinkler on it before we plant. And now, this is where our taro is going. That's where our pineapple's going, sticking straight up. You know what I mean? And then this is where our papayas, we're gonna take this whole zone here. In 4 months, this is gonna be shaded out by papayas that are this big and loaded with fruit. You guys are gonna come on the little cart and harvest papaya right here. So this mound is a little further along than this mound. I'm just getting this mound, I'm finishing clearing off the rest of the stuff off of it there. And now in this mound, if you come this way, remember I said you guys had a mound that you got some weeding to do for me? But it's not real bad weeding, but the timing is crucial. So see spiny amaranth there? It's just starting to get seeds. So we need to carefully pull all that spiny amaranth out. It goes across the street right there. You just throw it into that grass. It's an environment it can't compete in, and that's the easiest way for us to get rid of it. So this is a group, when you weed this maybe with a wheelbarrow and throw it all in the wheelbarrow together and then just wheelbarrow it across the street. So now you can see my scenario here if there were no weeds in it. This obviously needs to be weeded. This was stuff Maddie was supposed to have done. But that weed should go, that weed should go. Look, there's taro right there. As soon as you get that weed off that, taro's gonna explode. There's taro there, there's taro there, there's taro there, there's taro here, there's taro here. But you know what I did is I set the stage now. You guys can see where there's dirt. And now, when you guys are saying, oh, I'm not sure where I'm gonna plant the pineapples, now you know. The pineapples will go right here. Look, there's dirt right there. And a pineapple can still go within 2 feet of a taro, no problem. It's not one of the ones that are gonna hinder it. So if a pineapple goes here and a taro goes there, then don't it seem likely that Pua olena or something, you know what I mean, could go there or the next dirt spot over here? So our next move here is to pull out all these amaranth here. All you'll see left is taro. And then today or tomorrow, whatever that comes into our schedule, or the next day when we're all here, we're gonna come and we're gonna follow my taro pattern. And then we're gonna creatively, I'll come out here and I'll throw some things in spots. We're gonna take sugarcane and we're gonna put a pot here, a pot here, a pot here, a pot here. We're not gonna transplant it yet. We're simply gonna put the pots on the ground as markers. Then we're gonna come out here with Pua olena and go, oh, okay, and pineapples, which are right there. And then we're gonna go, okay, there's a cane there. We know where our canes are at, right? Now we're gonna come in and we're gonna we pulled all these weeds, and guess what? The weeds are showing us wherever there's a weed, there's dirt there. So keep that in our mindset too, right? Because the ground is not even underneath it. I've done like this and then covered it with wood chips. And that's why it's hard to see. But that's the key to making this work. And then so what'll happen next is we'll pull all these weeds, we'll put all the canes in the areas we want. There'll probably maybe be like 10 that'll go on this entire thing here probably. And then everywhere there's one of those canes, that we'll call an island. So now within that island, we know there's not bananas on this berm, there's gonna be a papaya tree there, a 3-spot papaya tree. Now on the other side of the cane over here, there'll be a 3-pot papaya tree. And what'll happen is every time they're ready, I will come out here with you and place them where I want them. And what that'll happen is eventually you guys will get the pattern, and after you've got the pattern, you'll be on the same exact boat with me. You'll be like, okay, taro doesn't go on the top of the hill, it goes here, or this goes here. So what do I have going on the top of the hill here? This needs weeding. But what it also tells you is anywhere there's weeds, there's dirt right here. So if we pull out a weed, that's where we stick squash seeds. Now what'll happen right away, all of this side that I left dirt on, this will all get squash. The squash will grow down the backside of the hill and it will cover this mound completely. We'll probably do thousands of pounds of squash right out of this hill right here. Probably a couple thousand pounds of it, I wouldn't doubt it. That's pretty much the average. So the squash are all that grows up on the top. Everything else we grow, it's on the bottom of the piles. Once the squash grows over that, then we'll tackle this side. I'll do to this back side what I did to the front side. I'll mush all that in, I'll throw wood chips all in there, and then we'll do the same thing on the back side of this pile to give you guys what's happening. So for now, this is what it's gonna look like. We're gonna start out planting. First thing is gonna be weeding. Second thing is gonna be cane plants put in key spots, which I'll come with you to do that. And then what the pile is transitioning into, let's go this way over here. And the weeding is easy right now because it's so small and easy. But if we don't weed it before the rain, it's gonna explode. And all these things will drop seed and then we'll be fighting it like a battle. And we already know there is a bunch of stuff that there are seeds in here, but I've been watering it so most of it would sprout. Now's when we wanna get it. So whatever day it is, we're gonna weed this thoroughly, and any weeds you can see on the top, we're gonna weed that thoroughly, but at the same time, we're gonna make sure we have some squash seeds ready. So when you guys weed the top, stick 2 squash seeds in, and just keep doing that on there. And we're, again, getting more than one bird stoned with the same joint. I don't know if we can use that, but we will. So now, this is the newest pile. Here, now we can see what a pile is gonna transition into. And I hate to say it, but this pile was completely planted, weeded, mulched, everything. Maddie, you got that? Oh yeah, I got that, 100%. Maddie, you got that? Oh yeah, we weeded it, blah, blah, blah. There were 20 canes in here. There was over 100 taro in here. All of that just went down to nothing because someone forgot to water it, someone didn't weed it, and let weeds totally cover it up. And then me even saying, no, that's still growing there. And for me to come in and do this corner, took me 10 minutes to come in here and just pull a bunch of weeds out and show them and said, hey, do that. It didn't get done over there. So pretty much everything died on that side. 9 months of working the project, we're working in the front. But look what could have been here. Ko tree, taro, the uhaloa, cane almost ready for harvest, out of control. Imagine the other 10 canes that were here, how it would have changed the dynamic on the hill. Just from coming in and getting it when it was like this and weeding it when it's young, rather than one tree coming up and putting thousands of amaranth seeds in there. In fact, there was one on my target right here. Here's an example of that. You see that amaranth up there? And you see this amaranth right here? And another one there? This is a 0 tolerance on our farm, always. And I don't care who you are. I care about all you guys and who you are, but whoever you are and you see this, pull this plant from the bottom. Gently take it over there to Peter Martin's property so he can be plagued with it, bastard. And yeah, so right here I see 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right off the bat. They could come out of here from the base. And then guess what's here? This is uhaloa. This is a native endemic plant that we make tea out of and we sell at our farm. So we're not only taking an endangered plant and making it work for us and work for the land and the native pollinators and everything that's here for it, it's also a huge part of culture, and that's so important for what we're doing and why we're growing so much of the voyaging plants. But this also, if you take the root out of this and you chew it, it'll totally numb your mouth. They call it the toothache plant or the Hawaiian aspirin, and it's called uhaloa. So just something good for you to know. I know a bunch of you guys know this, but at least you guys do right off the bat. So it's a weed, it's a native, it's a preferred weed. What do we want? Anything that we're not growing food to be something else that's playing a part, either the native ecosystem, the food system, or whatever else is coming along with it, right? So let's go in through where I've been working on this and come into the inside. And you see what I said on the other side of the hill? What's this side need? This side needs a good weed eating session, a lopping session, which means lopping these things out, and then it needs just some weed pulling. You see all this amaranth right now before it's seeding? This will be another phase of weeding this side of it. And then right here, I thought we were not as far along, but we're ready to plant papaya, pineapple, taro, all on this side. And if you want to plant this side, it just means we need to pull this weed. And some of these things, because I've been prepping them for a big weed, it should still come out pretty easy. Yeah, though these things will come out like nothing really in the long run. These ones right here, because they're in the mulch already. So look at what's underneath it. Perfect place to stick peanuts. Perfect place to stick a piece of taro. Perfect place to stick a pineapple. So this is how we plant this as we pull out. Look at the dirt that's under there. That's dirt we've been working on this pile for a year already. This was all big logs and branches. And now the weeds, they're part of it as long as they're not seeding. So I just wanted to point that out. And this is wet, not from sprinklers. This is wet from the tiny little bit of rain we had a little bit ago that was almost nothing. And it's still holding some moisture in here. Some of that's wet from the pile itself bleeding over. But so another thing that we do at the farm that obviously, we're just gonna call it a Maddie, that whoever's supposed to be here doing this doesn't do, is we pick up coconut fronds while the pods are at this stages before we've planted the squash out, and we throw these coconut fronds into there where they stick. We put wood chips on them. That's how we're getting these piles ready. You can see there's some moringa calamangai in that pile already. There was cane, there was tons of stuff planted in that pile. Didn't get watered for 9 months. Crazy, there's still stuff alive in it. Didn't get watered, weeded, nothing. So if this stuff can make it through a white kid with dreads, it can make it through anything. And that speaks to the type of farming we're doing, the resilience of it. And so now we had all this Mectanic Euro, all this silt I piled on top of it. Once this get wood chips and we start planting in there, you guys already know what's gonna happen when there's bananas and papayas and all the things around these piles. So just trying not to miss anything, and I can't help it, I can't give up a roust for Maddie, the white dreadlock kid. We're gonna make a Maddie t-shirt. Now, I really love Maddie, and he's awesome in so many ways, but he's definitely like an 11-year-old. So we need to have some pun for it. So in here, what's supposed to happen is all these palm fronds were supposed to be pulled out of here months and months ago and put on this pile. At one point, you guys are gonna come back and help with a little of that as well too. And it's a good, cool place to work, and we'll start cleaning this grove up. I'm more important things with building the houses, but these trees would not be here right here. These trees that you see right here, just to give you guys an example, this right here, and why I have the Maddie conversation going on, they looked like this 9 months ago, exactly like this. And all it would have taken to get rid of them is just this right here. Boom. But since they were just kind of ignored, I had this, all these palm leaves here are palm leaves that fell in the last 9 months. I had this where I could mow it almost. That was the next stage coming. But if we're not consistent in the little areas that we touch and then follow through later on, and we go, oh, I'll just leave that there because it's hard to pull, and then you're gone for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, this is what happens. Entire trees sprout up here. And so the next job here is for me to come through with my chainsaw, and this is what I've done in the last few months, if you guys haven't been following and looking at my orchard. I had someone that I thought was doing stuff and they weren't, so I would just come in like a madman, like 3 hours a day with my chainsaw, and I'm reclaiming everywhere, and I'm cutting all this stuff out. So if we look through here, I just did this with the machine the other day, so now we have a path going through here, And now our jungle is starting to come together. See the mangoes on the trees here? More mounds that are in their infancy. What do you guys think is going at the bottom of that mound? Puolena, taro, pineapple, papaya, tea leaf, chili pepper, same exact things. We're just right in that island right there between the coconut trees. Sweet potato, puolena, carrots, beets, and you're gonna see everywhere there's these mounds that are already made and totally mature and ready for planting. But I couldn't do it without a maintenance crew other than just doing this all by myself. But I know that just by myself I can do this, so that I know that's valuable knowledge to be able to showing you guys this way of doing it. Because like, let's just look right here in this area. I guarantee you in a year, we could grow 5, maybe even 10,000 pounds of food in one island right here by doing it the right way and in the strategy. It might take us a year to get to that kind of productive rates on it, but by diversity, how many coconuts will each tree do once they're taken care of? They'll each do a few hundred pounds. The papayas will each do 100 pounds. 6 papayas right here, 600 pounds of papaya already. Pua olena, 20 sites here. Pineapple, they're like 4 pounds each or whatever. So in this island, that's the kind of numbers to think, that we can do thousands of pounds of food in one tiny little spot that way if we're diversifying like that. But we're also not turning it into an open, clear field. There's this diversity around it. You know what I mean? So later on, this is slotted for other trees to grow here. There's an ulu tree that goes right here. That's gonna be really awesome. And there's coconut, ulu, mango, and all these things in the same zone. My beehives, you guys see right there, I'm about ready to do a bunch of work on the beehives. By the time the next 2 or 3 months goes down, this area you see in front of you, it didn't have grass like that. None of this area did. This was all dust everywhere. So what we're able to, this is what it looks like though, and the reason I brought you here is to show you a transition. Now, if this would have actually been taken care of for the last 9 months with my little worker going and clipping and doing this and weed eating, this would already look like a golf course back here, because I had this cleared for mowing already. And I just had to come through with the machine and wipe out trees that were all that big because it wasn't really getting that consistency. So I'm not trying to beat a horse, but I wanna let everybody know how important like that consistent mannerism of to do this. So what do we see behind us there? You see how dry those piles are? That's a lot of the stuff we just took out from not being taken care of over the last 9 months. So that's back in that pile. That pile when I started was 10 feet tall with all the trees. I took 200 trees out right here. Opiuma trees, and like you see that one right there. This was enshrouded, all these trees were kind of dead, and then every one of them had leaves all the way from the top to the bottom. So what happens in here, that's a bad matty job again. Those branches would have been brought onto that pile neatly. They would have been laid down horizontally. We would have chomped them down a little bit and then threw wood chips on them, and that pile would look really nice. That pile is just people getting lazy and throwing them any direction that way. So they don't look like our other piles, but that will still break down and it'll still find its place, and all the boar beetles and the termites and everything will eat that material anyway. So it's still better than having it growing out here, and I'm not that bummed on it. I'm just pointing it out. We see right there, we see a Elima plant. But right next to the Elima plant is a weed. So you'll see that constantly, wherever my natives are, we'll just leave our natives all in place wherever they're at and have them seeding. And then, so here's a little example of what was an island. Still is kind of an island. Again, it didn't get taken care of. It didn't get the mulch it needed, and just grass, everything grew up on it, had trees and everything on it. But these are really good papaya trees, and if these were taken care of like they were supposed to be, they'd be this fat from the top to bottom with papayas like that one right there that you're gonna see. This is basil. This is Pua olena right here coming up from under the ground. There was a ton of it in here. There was a cacao tree right here. There's more papayas. There was a chili pepper bush over there. So you can get an idea. We're just mowing around the tree, but boom, right here alone is 400 or 500 pounds of food a year. 100 islands turns out into 40,000 pounds of food a year. And that's kind of where my concept is. It's easy to mow around it. even one island feeds another island as long as there's piles somewhere for everything to gather and kind of have this where area it holds the moisture. That's another little pile, and that pile just got a couple little different dynamics on it. It just got water and some weeds off it, and it wasn't planted with anything else yet. My dog is buried there in the center of it. But an idea. So like this right here, when someone comes in here and they're like, Eddie, I cut the branch off the tree. And again, I'm not trying to throw anybody off the bus, but I need to show to you guys, what is this doing? This is gonna kill this tree. You see it right here? You see how it's actually got through the cambium here just from growing here? This could have been avoided months ago just by the guy I asked to clip this, just to come with the loppers and clip it. So they're the little things that are important that we might not always see and just think, oh, that's fine there. But if we really observe this and we go, oh, this tree's gonna die because of that eventually. Just take a loppers and cut that out of the bottom there. They're the little things that are important. Again, so I'm just pointing that out. Not like you guys are doing any of that. Coconuts, eventually all these coconuts, we will grab all these. Most of these are for copra. This is when the shell separates inside of it, and I'll show you guys all about that later. But all of these are gonna be cracked in half and the husk put in our potting soil areas so we can use cocoa coir in there. And then all the shells, we're recovering those. And I'm gonna set up a program where even you folks can come in one day of the week or whatever, and we'll all sand coconut shells and we'll make stuff out of them, and it provides ways to bring income and whatnot. But instead of these coconuts being here, what we would look for in my pile is one that is compromised already. Like say it's ran over. This isn't a great example, but it's not gonna have a good shell in it. It's not gonna have anything that we can use. Those will go right in the pile like that. And you see where I showed you the pile over there where it's all up in there and jagged and it's not right? Looks good right here, yeah? That's the difference, just doing it right. You see the piles behind you over there? Like I can still get wood chips on the top of those, and then we'll be planting all around the bottoms of them. We're not planting in the mounds, and that's where a lot of people, they think we're planting in the mounds, but we're not. We're planting at the bases of the mounds, except in some areas, like up front. So it's really different, the whole practice, than it is up front. Part of that was because Taya wanted to plant a bunch in the top already. But watch, also I'm gonna point out, the taro we do at the bottom, there'll be no little corms like that. The corms will all be like this. One, it was planted in Makahiki, but number two, it was planted where the chips hadn't broke down yet, and so nutrients were locked up on the top of it. Like I said, I didn't care, I wanted taro to give away, and the amount of huli we got from it to be able to plant more is well worth it. But if you look at all of our taro we plant on the bottom, we're getting 10-pound corms, and we're getting 40 pounds off one plant, and it's a huge difference. So there's no wrong. I'm just showing you guys what it's transitioning into. And so here, let's walk this way over here now. No, the coconuts are not supposed to be around a tree like that. Those were all ones that were saved that were supposed to be husked. And when I had 5 interns here, they were all supposed to husk 5 coconuts a day. That pile would have been gone months ago. So again, I can't point out again enough the consistency side of things that has to happen. This pile that's behind us, you can see a lot of the dry cure is still going on. But this is what we call zone 1. And zone 1, we went backwards in what we were working with. This was one of the last zones we were working on. And so when the fire came, we had just gotten this planted out with banana and vetiver and papaya trees and little things, right? And then we had that planted out about a month before, what you see right here. None of this got any water on it for 8 months. 0. No weeding, nothing taking care of it. Now in the last month and a half, 2 months, me with a whip on Maddie, going, oh, clean this, pull this out of here, pull this out of here. Now you can see where it transitioned into and where it would have been at. Everything started like that. Everything started like this, rock hard plastic in the ground, the gnarliest shit. And then we're able to take it from this and transition into what you're gonna see just in one little spot there, how this works. And then so this should be done better. There's a lot that needs to go on to here, which I'll explain that out later on. There's a lot of plants that shouldn't be here. But these papayas were all pretty much dead and knocked over from the storm on August 8th. They were cracked in half. And even with no water, no love, no maintenance, how could they possibly come back to life in the dead Olla Walla where it's this dry? It's the mycelium. It's what's going on in that pile that gives them this ability and this resilience that make them like really something worthwhile that's gonna last. And do you need to feed a forest? No, you don't need to feed a forest. Why is there more moisture in the ground where you're standing at? Feel how cool it is around us. Why can something get full sunlight when it needs it, but also shade when the sun passes the other side and then it gets a break? That's how plants are. They don't want to be in the full sunlight all the time or in the shade all the time. But that diversity of everything working together, you can feel the temperature change in here, and you can see we'll be able to grow things here that we won't be able to grow up front just because we don't have that shade in place yet. So let's walk up this hill. And again, what'll happen here, see all those trees there? Those are all weeds that have been growing for 6 months, right, that you see behind there. What we've cut out in the last month look just like that out of here. And then what happens pretty instantaneously with just a little bit of water on it, what'll happen next is we'll cut all the vetiver, we'll pull the rest of the weeds out of here. Our vetiver has survived with very minimal water. And then look, literally this, from this to this right here. And that's even with nothing going on. And so that's why these plants are still alive 9 months later with no water, even though they were cracked in half. And that's like the strongest thing that I'm really trying to get across to folks, is that like the resiliency of these plants, the nutrient density. What are we leaving behind when we grow something? We're leaving this behind. This is a legacy left by pineapple and sugarcane under my feet right now. And above me right here is sacred all burial grounds. Iwi kupuna up here everywhere. And this area should be honored and treasured and taken care of. And if the ancestors are looking down at trash and nastiness, wouldn't we want to honor them by at least malama, take care of the Aina? And so I feel like for me, like I'm called to do that and to make sure no matter what, they're looking down on something that's like worthy of it. And that we as stewards of the planet, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be taking care of it. And this is like when we walk Auntie through here or whatever we walk through here, this is our wealth right here, to me personally. I know that different people look at that differently. So you see that transition from there to here, and now let's walk together and let's watch it. Every one of these trees when I started looked like dead sticks. There was no grass in here. There was black cloth and carpet on the ground, and there was powder a foot deep. Took me 2 days to even get to it with a chainsaw and cracking around here. And we pulled many mango trees out, many coconut trees out, and we pulled thousands of upiuma. And if you look behind these trees right here, what those things are growing in, those are the piles where we put all the dead trees at. Look right here. All the berms are everywhere behind us. But what I'm telling Maddie and whoever was here, all you had to do is take care of it. I can go here and I can point out a cacao tree right there that no one knew was there. And even though everything was growing around it, because I planted it there, I knew it was there. And that's why I'm saying for us to keep in track with everywhere, once we planted somewhere, we've kind of initiated the spot for nurturing. And that's kind of like what's happening with it. We initiated that spot. So that cacao tree, now that it's noticed, it'll get wood chips around it. I guarantee you by the end of the summer, it'll be this big, even though it's been there a year and just shrouded out and gotten nothing. Each one of these will be cut. We'll be able to mulch this area consistently. These mounds in here, this was a worm bin, this pond right here. And the way I did this worm bin was to dig a hole, fill it with wood chips, soak it, put earthworms in it, and then lay a pond liner on top of it. And knowing that the pond liner would leak every once in a while and not be a permanent pond. And so let's check that out right here. And the reason I do that, you see how dry it is? Even in the driest summer, without water, those worms have a safe spot. And that safe spot is underneath this liner, right here. And around this spot, there's berms that you guys can hardly see, but we grew thousands of pounds of onion, squash. Right here already, we've grown 10,000 pounds of food right in front of you where you sit right here, not including these coconuts. And in the hill right here, look, you're standing on Pua Olena. You gotta be careful. There's gonna be a bunch of Pua Olena, which is turmeric, will sprout out of this hill. There's a lot of things that'll sprout out. This would be flourishing, but again, my workers forgot it was here and didn't do any maintenance to it. So now, like coming in the last month, we've cut everything out, and now all these mounds you see around me, if you look right here, look, you can still see carrots from last year right here. Yeah, look at this, guys. Look at all my purple carrots right here. These are all dark purple carrots right here. And what these are gonna do, now they've really weathered the storm, no water, these are gonna make the best seed ever, because these seeds are gonna be naturalized to growing for months without water in these conditions. And so the seed from these carrots will reseed these entire hills. Right here, we grew, I don't know, 800 pounds of squash right here, just in this tiny little berm. What we'll do again now, we'll mow this, we'll put wood chips on it, we'll replant some of the stuff we lost in the winds from the fire, and then this place will thrive and flourish again. It's kind of on its way to coming back. But just the idea that carrots could still be there a year later, you know what I mean, 9, 10 months later, and they're still alive with no water is pretty cool. I know this probably stretched out longer. I didn't realize it would take so long, but is everyone all right still? We're a few more minutes into it. I'll jump through the rest of it pretty quick. So tea leaf, this tea leaf with the really big tea leaves on it, this is what they make the skirts out of. This is Kamehameha. The other tea leaf is much smaller than this. You can see other ones over there where I'll point it out to you. These things have been through 50-mile-an-hour winds all winter. We're about ready to come in where the winds slow down for the whole summer, so we'll trim these all out and this place is just gonna spark to life beautiful. We have 50 mango trees. This tree was dead when we started. Look at all the oranges on it. Right now, there's 150 pounds of oranges on that tree that are just starting. This tree, you can literally see the dead stump still, see? When I started, this tree does 4 fruitings a year and we have pulled 800 pounds of lemon off this tree already. Just by simply cutting all the invasives that were around it, everything here looked exactly like what you're looking at. And when I say it was that hard for me to get in there, imagine trying to go from there to there with your chainsaw right now and see how long it'll take you to reach that tent behind there, cutting through that and moving it out of your way. So this right here, there was no grass. It was 2 foot deep of the worst powder you've ever seen. And every time it would rain, it would flow right into the ocean. It would flow out of the mountain, it would flood, it would leave all the silt here. And so this is how this was designed. The pile you see here, this is a 2-year-old pile from when I started. This pile was 12, 15 feet tall when I started. All trees. And look where it's at now. On this pile, we have grown thousands of pounds of squash. We've grown thousands of pounds of beets and carrots, taro. I think we grew 800 pounds of taro just right here. And then we didn't even have to replant hulis. Every one of these were 15-pound corms that we pulled out. Really big, massive. Why? Because they're feeding from the pile. As the pile breaks down, 16 feet, 12, 14, 16 feet, almost as big as these papayas is how this pile started. And then all I did in the beginning was plant squash on it. The squash, shaded it out, dropped it down, and then I'm gonna show you I have worm bins that are stuck into it. They just got redone, so you won't see much worms in them now, but we plant the worm bins in there with no bottom. We throw wood chips in it, then we throw compost in it, and then we throw another layer. And then that's what we compost right in the berms. The berms eventually disappear, and what are you left with here? You're left with papaya trees. This is my good strain of papaya right here. This is where we'll be getting seeds from. This one and the one in the front by Ollie's grave, and that one as well. These were the papayas already had here that made it through it. I believe these all cracked in half during the storm and then came back somehow, or at least lost all their leaves. Look at the pineapples. These pineapples, just a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, they were enshrouded in weeds up to here. You couldn't even tell they were here. And then just in that short period of cutting the weeds off of them, maybe a month and a half ago, remulching things, doing the maintenance, look at them as soon as they got sunlight on them. These are the super sweet, spineless white pineapple, which is what all those starts are up there. This is what each one of your pineapples should turn into if it's planted by the summer, next summer at this time. So you guys thinking about that, every pineapple you're putting in, this is what it'll look like if it's planted right. And look at that. And then these are what we plant. This is the slip. And the slip, if I stick this in the ground, a year from now, that's what it'll be. Not 3 years like the top of the pineapple, but a year from now. So there we go, super sweet white pineapple. And I know that you have a place to plant this already, Jessica, so that one's yours.
Here, I'll hold it, let you hold it.
She wants to hold the cat, she don't want that. Okay, so there was supposed to be 3 ulu trees in here, which haven't gotten in here yet, just because I'm behind. This is what the peanut will look like, guys. Remember we planted peanut today and I talked to you about it? This is what peanut looks like. And if you look right here, it's starting to throw out spikes. And these little spikes, see them right here, out of the bottom? They spike into the ground. Each one of those turns into a peanut. That is a peanut. So a flower turns into a spike. You can see it right here real carefully. Flower turns into a spike right through the flower. And then the spike comes out, sticks itself in the ground, turns into a peanut, and then it spreads out and keeps doing it. And so then you come and pull it up and you have this big old bounty of peanuts underneath it. A lot of the peanuts I grow, I leave here. I'm just growing them to feed the ground. Again, we're doing a lot of things here that we're feeding the ground with. Now, say we have some friends over and we want to have some boiled peanuts or we want to make some fresh peanut butter. Cool, go grab 10 of those peanut plants out there. Boom, let's do it. So that's the way I grow a lot of things, where it's give and take constantly. And a lot of these piles sit in their states. And then now the piles really started to break down. What do we do now? We just drop wood chips in the holes and banana stumps in the holes. And now, where if there were ulu trees, this is a year-old avocado from seed. From seed, a year-old avocado tree. Yep. Is that crazy? Like it might be 14 months, but no way it could be more than 14 months. Because this pile, no, I didn't plant anything here before then. So that speaks really loudly. And what I told these guys is I promised them, this is where my worm bin was buried, and which my worm bins are over there now. I've been doing this for many years, and I can get an avocado tree to be in full fruit in 3 years. And I will bet money on it that this thing will be fruiting by 2 more years, which is unheard of. It's usually 7 years. But what I'm showing in my experiments is if you give it the nutrient density and the biodiversity and something it can really feed off, it changes the game. And I found it out by accident 30 years ago by just consistently having them in compost piles that I made in my worm piles, and every single time they were fruiting in 3 years. So I think that's a pretty good example of that. Nothing has been planted here, anything you see here except for the mango trees, more than 2 years, not even quite 2 years. We're 9 months in, and we were almost a year in at the time. So yeah, nothing has been planted here more than 12 and 9, a month short of 2 years, yeah, 23 months or whatever. So that speaks pretty loudly, and considering there was no grass, you walk through here, it was a nightmare. So in here, there's, these are good papaya avocado tree right here. That's just, I think, like 6 or 8 months old. There's asparagus, there's tangerines, purple pea flower. This is the next place we're gonna have to come get seed from. The duck pond where the new ducks are coming. Orange trees that were all dead that are just ridiculous how much fruit they're putting out. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Does anything need fertilizer? No, I don't think anything needs fertilizer. I think that if we take care of the land and we take trees that were dead and you think, oh, I'd have to fertilize that tree or something. No, you don't have to fertilize the tree. You have to have mounds over there that this tree feeds from. We don't add compost to this tree. It feeds from that pile behind me. This tree right here is an interesting little experience I've been showing my interns that have lived here. So it was a small little bush, didn't hardly do anything. This tree 2 months ago looked like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. And because it was suffering from a little mealybug on the bottom of it, one of our different types of bugs that suck juices out of it, and all it needed was to have a wet wash rag with a little peppermint soap on it and be washed once in a while. And because it wasn't washed, it didn't do any growth. And I'm like, watch what's gonna happen when you wash it. Maddie washed it a month ago, twice in a row. All of this is new growth. Like I think I have a picture of it somewhere, but it was a tiny little stick, and in just a month's time from just getting washed, it's just exploding. This tree you see behind me right here, it had the same thing going. I don't know if you guys can see all the new green growth on it, but once he finally decided to just wash the tree the way it needed to be, it exploded. And so this is something you could go by every day and not notice. I have some trees that still need to be washed here, some avocado trees. Let's look at the ones over here. Our solar system is there. That's our area for all of our interns to hang out. Our intern huts are the tents that you see behind. Tara lives in one of those, and Tara's new space is right there, is gonna be. Well, that has a lot of cleanup for us to do on it, but in here, look, the mounds were here. What do you see here? These mounds, they weren't taken care of for months and months. So the only reason these don't have papayas on them is these only got cleaned up a week ago. They've been enshrouded and not watered and not taken care of. But if these were taken care of, it would all look like that first mound you've seen. You know what I mean? It would actually be really righteous. So in here, papaya tree, pineapple. This was all taro in here. There was a bunch of Pua elena in here, but it all died. So we got to plant new ones in here. So this area is no different. Look, chili pepper, rosemary, Rolenia, oregano, more chili pepper. So this also kind of speaks to how an island should be. Letting the lilikoi grow over these pounds instead of the squash, because we want that wood break to grow into these back trees here. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Spanish oregano. I'm sure you are, but pass it around and let everybody smell it. It's kind of cool. And the rosemary, and then the uhaloa. So it actually looks, Maddie actually washed this tree. So look, this tree had nothing but these leaves you see on it right here 2 weeks ago. That's all that was on this tree was these leaves. And look, they're still not done for it. It needs another washing. You see them all over the bottom of it right here? So all that it will take to bring this tree and make it boost even further is whoever comes out here with a wash rag, and I'm gonna show you guys right now how that's done really. That's literally a loofah sponge. Guess they don't have the water on right now or something. That is a loofah sponge with a little bit of water on it. I'm not gonna put thick soap on it. And then you'll come to the tree and you'll literally just go, oh, this one has those bugs on it? Wash it off. It kills the bugs in their place. The soap gets on their skin and suffocates them. Even if it's a leaf you're gonna pick off and throw away, do the same thing. Just wipe it off on the bottom. And what you're essentially doing is, you see this stuff on the bottom? Done. Now you're washing it with a hose. That was the difference between this tree just being a few dead leaves, and this tree is 2 years old. This tree should look like that. And if it were taken care of properly, and just these little tiny things were done to it, it would look like that. In fact, you guys are here, so I invite you guys to now watch its journey. Now as it does get washed, like Maddie has to wash it now because I'm slapping a whip. Every time I came up here, this was filled with dishes. This morning I was out here yelling at him, put those dishes away. But like, cause it's an area that's communal for everybody to be here. So I'm pointing this out partially for you guys just to know that. If I'm telling you, oh, that tree needs it, it needs to be washed, you guys will understand what I'm saying. And I wish you guys could have seen this tree 2 weeks ago to see what happened. And it took a lot of bitching at him to do it. These pineapples all right here, you see they got some light on them now. This area is finally been starting to open up now. And you can see a lot of things that I planted, it's actually making a pineapple now. Still needs a little bit of help, but where we're gonna be planting papayas, everywhere behind here, we're gonna be planting a shitload more papayas. And this stretches all the way around to out to the back of this area. It's the same mound, and you can see it still isn't taken care of the way it needs to be. All the taken care of stops right here. But the reason I'm pointing it out to all of you is you guys are doing the same thing. And while you won't necessarily be taking care of these berms back here, you will be creating the same thing in those berms up there that's for rec. And so I want to just make sure you guys understand that. And so hopefully this helps with like the bigger picture of what we're creating. In the front, will eventually look like this. And in a pretty short time, shorter than you'd imagine, 5 years, it will literally, everything will be this tall and this big if we do it right back there. And stalks of bananas and big ulu trees and avocado trees that should be as tall as this papaya tree already. If that's 2 years on one that was totally neglected, then that can kind of give you the mindset of what can actually happen. And if this was not a bit of grass or anything here, and this was just dust that was blowing away in the wind and going everywhere, just by consciously watering it with a sprinkler and paying attention to it and we put mulch on the ground everywhere first to cover it up, and then we seeded it. And it's not only seeded with grass, but this is a lawn of desmodium and all these other plants that are nitrogen fixers. Feel that with your foot, how nice that is. Like what we're doing, I mow it on high, and grass is probably only 30% of it. And so creating lawns that feed themselves with nitrogen fixers and, again, diversity. If it was just grass, it'd look like that. But all these other things that are drought resistant and whatnot, them all working together, that's what really makes a difference. Chicken area. There's a penthouse chicken pen that Tom made. This was Terrace Hut, but it's not gonna be anymore. A pile like this is a worm pile. it should have wood chips completely smothering it. That's what's next for this. And then as soon as we put a sprinkler on it and smother it with wood chips, I'll be able to come in here and just pull out handfuls of worms and show you guys. But right now it's kind of dormant still because it's not got the water it needs and it doesn't have the wood chips, and these are all new branches that were growing everywhere that got put on top of it. So yeah, to let everybody understand that. This mango tree right here, I sold to the guy who planted it here. This is from Molokai, and this is a mapuleho, a prairie mango, a raposa mango, and one other version of a Hayden, all on one tree. So it has 4 different kinds of mangoes on it. In total here, out of the 50 trees, I have about 15 or 16 different types of mangoes. They're all different. So like really stringless ones, ones that have lots of strings, ones that get small, right next to ones that get big. So somebody has to help me carry these back. You guys can split them out amongst you who doesn't have a thing. But we're gonna actually cut those up for lunch since we don't have other things today. All these trees are supposed to get wood chips around them. All these trees are calamansi trees, and as you can tell, they were all dead stumps. And after we cleared all the trash and everything off them, they all grew back. And so we're like, oh, crazy. Now we have all these calamansi trees here. The reason I walked this way was to show you guys actual desmodium. The other one has a different name, Darkosia or something like that. But the desmodium, you can see it right here everywhere. And it grows real low. It's a legume, so it fixes nitrogen out of the atmosphere right into it, so you never have to fertilize the lawn. What people don't realize, a lot of groundwater contamination is not just farmers, it's people in their yards throwing pelletized lawn fertilizer, 1616, into their yards, and it's not helping anything. And you're not supposed to just have one thing growing. It's the diversity that feeds it and takes care of it. So that's like if you consider all the lawns in America being fed lawn food, which is just terrible. Massive, massive amounts of our streams and different things being contaminated with nitrates, which is chemical fertilizer. So again and again and again, we see that happening. So when this is all good, this looked really bad and giant. I mowed this 4 times in the last 9 months, and I just did my last mow a few days ago and finally have got Maddie kind of halfway weed eating. So it's really starting to look good now. And now Malia's been jumping in, and we should have this place just pretty immaculate here pretty soon. And any of you guys are welcome to use this place for a family gathering. Bring your kids over, whatever. Bring Auntie over and wander around it. You guys all have that right to this since you work with me here at Rec. I just want you guys to know that. So if you want to just come sit in the shade one day and you're surfing Olawalu, you guys are always welcome to this. All of you and your families who work here with us. I want to make sure that that's real obvious. Logs that sit around here. Check it out. This isn't a great example, but usually I lift them up and they got tons of earthworms underneath them. It's just the time of day. Where there was not one earthworm here when we started. See how this thing has a mushroom on the side of it right here growing out of the log? That mushroom is eating this log and spoon feeding it to others. You see the mycelium underneath the log? The little webs? This is what's happening, whether it's in wood chip form or whether it's in solid log form. When we came here, we actively did a survey to see if we could find one earthworm. There's not one single earthworm on this entire land anywhere. It was all dust. We can pretty much lift over, I'm gonna lift this log before you sit on it. We can pretty much lift over every log, and if we don't see the earthworms there immediately, you can see their castings all over the place in here. And you can see, even with no water, that they're already pushing stuff up through the ground. Earthworm casting right there. And earthworms right there. So now, 2 years into it, yeah, a little bigger worm right there, right? They're different sizes. They're starting to come into abound. And so that's what it's about. It's about like actually taking a place, it doesn't have any worms, putting worms in one place, and then 6 months later, looking quarter mile down the road, and your worms are there. And that's because you simply made a pile of wood chips that connected it. So they can't grow over into the sun on the dry land, but if there's wood chips, they'll crawl under it to get to wherever they need to. And so that's like kind of what we're doing, is we're reconnecting the corridors or the pathways for the fertility to spread itself out. And like once we realize that, just as simple as setting logs on the ground. What's underneath this one? Let's tip this one and see what it looks like. These things from the mycelium, here we're just gonna do that, just that with it that way. Just to look, the networks that are on, some it's more than others, and the others a few centipedes under some. This one hasn't got much water on it, but I guarantee you, some of them it's a lot more than others. Oh, it looks like someone's been shredding coconut cream. Did we show you guys how to do that yet? That'll happen soon here too. There's also a bunch of ants under here, which is a pretty common occurrence. And this black ant isn't so bad. We're pretty dry right now. But sometimes I can lift these logs and it's just like a mat of mycelium and earthworms all over the place underneath it and not just worms crawling up my arms. But yeah, I probably said too much already. Any questions?
A million questions. How do you get the mangoes from the top when you're ready to harvest them?
I send people like you up climbing. And you get to try the monkey in you.
Cool.
See that big ladder?
Yeah.
Well, that's one way. And the mango, the ladder and the stick. That's how it looks around here. The ladder and the stick. And normally the sticks are put together better, like this.
They don't match the fruit.
I know, yeah. Maddie's like, how come I can't get the mango in there? I'm like, dude. It's like he's putting the mango and it's popping out. And I'm like, dude. Yeah. So.
Are there any bugs you don't want here?
Fruit fly. Fruit flies everywhere around us. So we have a strict policy. If there's a mango on the ground, either it's thrown into the chicken pen and the chickens eat it right away, or it's thrown into a bucket of water. If there's an orange on the ground, it means it's been stung by fruit fly. Goes into a bucket of water to drown them out. You guys, some of you guys got to see that the other day on the loofahs. It's the same fruit fly. If you go to my Instagram, I'll send it to you. I just put a film about that on there. You should actually check it out because it's kind of, oh yeah, you see where the fruit flies pop out of it? So what we're talking about, instead of fruit flies being able to pop out of the mango when it falls, where 100 will come out of one and they're all gonna get stung. If this wasn't mowed, and that's why I kept being so pissed at Maddie, like, hey, look, I've done everything. I've got this set up, just mow it. Because if it's not mowed, the mangoes fall on the ground just like over there, and the fruit fly jumps out. And if there's tall grass around it, it'll pupate and it'll turn into a fruit fly. And 100 of them will jump out of that mango. So we need strictly, where we have the orchards, to keep the grass short and nice and low cut so we don't breed out the fruit fly. You know what I mean? It's super important. A lot of people, they have this orange tree in their yard and they wonder why they can't get any mangoes because their orange tree is breeding out so much fruit fly. And here's the thing, once you do it for a month consistently, there's no more fruit flies left. And you've controlled the vector. And that's what happens. Once you get a vector established, fruit has been falling for 4 months, there's millions of them, they can sting at will. We got to start collecting where they're laying their eggs and not let them hatch out again. And that's how we have to think. We have to think that way with the amaranth for the seed. Same thing. Our weed cycle is the same exact way. Why do we want to wash those trees? You saw those bugs are breeding under there. Same thing. I want to go under there and knock them down so they can't just keep spreading to the next tree and to the next tree, because that's what happens. In fact, if you look, there's a couple more avocado trees over here that haven't been gotten to yet. I went through and I pulled a bunch of the leaves off instead of washing it, just because I didn't have time and I was trying to point it out to Maddie. But watch when this tree gets washed. It's gonna just explode. Every single head like this will look like that other one did, and this thing will just green out immediately. But these only got here from that tree that wasn't getting washed. Because it exploded, they get to the point where like we got too much and then they swarm and they fly to the next tree and they fly to the next tree. So if you see one tree getting hit, that's your thing, like, oh yeah, let's wipe it out off that tree so it doesn't keep spreading. It's kind of the same thing like we're on the nursery, why we don't want the pots touching. Because once a bug crawls from one and crawls all over them, we're done for. Another reason that's like a good argument against monoculture is straight rows in a line, all one plant. What if the cabbage mouth comes and it's all cabbage? Dude, you're losing the whole field. Now imagine if you had some cabbage here, some asparagus in between it, an island. You might lose 2 or 3 islands, but you're not gonna lose everything. They're not just gonna march right down the trail and keep breeding right where they're in place. So that's another thing that helps a forest survive is diversity. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm gonna sting this, oh, I'm gonna sting that. Where am I going? There's something else in between there. So I think that's a really important part of it. Okay, mangoes and lunch, guys, and whatever else. Bah.